Hello, I'm Siddharth Idgunji. I'm happy to present to you the 101 of life skills. Way back in 1993, the World Health Organization and the UNICEF invited educationists and business experts from across the world to identify critical skills that help students manage effectively the challenges of life. This global community of experts identified 10 skills that they called life skills or 21st century skills. We observed that these skills can be learned by adults too, because they are relevant to us in our work and in our social life. Our study produced 7 chapters of each of these 10 life skills. These 70 articles cover not only the theory, but also the essence of books related to each topic, movies covering these topics, and even mythological stories. 101 of my relatives came forward to be a part of this project. Just to give you some stats about the contributors, the youngest reader is 9 years of age and the eldest 91. 63% of the readers are women, 52% are professionals, 22% are CEOs, 46% above 60. The next large chunk in this age group is between 30 and 40. The whole project took us approximately 3 months. Hope our efforts help you understand the basics of life skills and encourages you to deploy these in your life. We have managed to create small articles, not more than 400 words or 3 minutes of listening. Each chapter can be comprehended by an 8th grader. We use the Flesch KinCad readability scoring to test this. Happy listening. Enjoy.
Hello, I'm Ranjani Datta. In today's session, we will learn about the life skill called decision making. We will learn about the decision making process and the challenges faced while making decisions. We will explore tools such as decision making tree, De Bono tools, and the secretary problem. We will learn about models such as the Eisenhower matrix and the Pareto principles. We will also study the role of emotions in decision making. Let me start this session with the definition of decision making skill. Decision making is the ability to use a decision making technique to arrive at a decision. A major part of decision making involves generation of alternatives and ranking of these alternatives in terms of impacts. Only then can we take a decision objectively. I will now hand you over to my team members to read out their chapters.
I'm Abhijit Datta. This article is about a 6-step decision-making process and about the challenges faced when making decisions. The first step is preparation. List all stakeholders who will be impacted by the decision. Select the method we propose to use. There are many decision-making models such as the Vroom-Yetton model, rational decision-making model, etc. to choose from. Identify data that will be used for making decisions. Determine how to communicate the decision to the stakeholders. The second step is the situation investigation. Analyze the problem using 5 whys, fishbone analysis, etc. Define the problem in a scientific manner. The IRCP method can be effectively used to define a problem. IRCP is ideal state, reality, consequences, and proposal. The third step is to generate alternatives to choose from using techniques such as brainstorming, decision tree, etc. for this purpose. The fourth step is to assess the alternatives using cost-benefit analysis, risk analysis, etc., and then to select the most suitable alternative. The fifth step is to communicate the decision to the stakeholders, giving all necessary information about the decision. The sixth step is to maintain records for future reference. Now let me explain some of the challenges that we face when making decisions. The first is about complexity. There are many complex, interrelated factors that can add to the difficulty of decision making. The second is the impact of the decision. If the impact is significant, it can lead to stress and confusion. The third could be a problem of plenty, what we call the abundance syndrome. It is more challenging to make a choice when there are too many alternatives to choose from. Finally, there could be problems related to vested interests or interpersonal issues. These could impact objectivity in decision making. Let me end this chapter with a quote from J.R. Rim. It's not about making the right choice, it's about making the choice and making it right.
Hi, this is Aditi Datta. This article is about a decision-making technique called decision tree. The decision tree technique was proposed by John Ross Quinlan, a computer science researcher. He proposed it in 1975 in his book called Machine Learning. Of course, the decision tree concept isn't new. It was first proposed by William of Ockham, a 14th century philosopher. William of Ockham is famous for his principle called Occam's razor or law of parsimony. This law states, entities should not be multiplied without necessity. In layman's words, the simplest explanation is usually the right one. A decision tree is a visual representation of possible solutions to a decision. It uses a tree-like model of decisions and their possible consequences. A decision tree consists of three types of nodes: root, branches, and leaves. The root node is the starting point of the decision tree. Should I buy a car? Would be the root node when deciding to buy a car. Or should I quit my job? Could be the root node when deciding to quit a job. This root node will have two branches, the yes and no branches. These branches in turn will have leaf nodes under them. So in the case of the root node, should I buy a car? The leaf node could be, do I have good public transport? Or do I have to travel much outside of the city? In the case of the root node, should I quit my job? The leaf nodes could be, do I have another job offer? Is the job offer better? Do I have savings? Does my current manager give me a better offer? Etc. Each leaf node will have its own yes and no branches. The decision tree will grow with a series of leaves and yes and no branches until you have no further leaves under the branches. It is always fun to draw a decision tree even for small decision-making events in life. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Mark Twain. Good decisions come from experience. Experience comes from making bad decisions.
I am Dhananjay Rao. In this chapter, we will talk about two techniques defined by Edward de Bono, the father of lateral thinking. De Bono observes that when we make decisions, we see only a part of the solution, or leave things out, or ignore the impact of our decisions. These gaps could make our decisions faulty. De Bono proposed two thinking tools, APC and CAF. APC, which stands for Alternatives, Possibilities, and Choices, is to generate alternatives, and CAF, Consider All Factors, is to validate these alternatives. The first step in APC is to list all available traditional alternatives. The second step is to take a step back and to use creativity to generate further alternatives. Let's say you want to raise capital to start a business. What would be the traditional alternatives? Banks, venture firms, angel investors, etc. The next step is to ask questions. Example, how do I start a business with no outside financing? Or, can I convert some of my existing assets into working capital? These will open up new choices to add to the list of alternatives. With reference to CAF, validate each of the alternatives against key factors. Example, the purpose factor. Does it meet the purpose? The feasibility factor. Is it affordable? The fit factor. Is it environmentally friendly? The impact factor. What are the benefits and what are the dangers? Let me share with you some interesting stories where the decision makers fail to validate their decisions against key factors. The first story is about the Don Sahong hydropower project in Cambodia. The location chosen for the dam was a habitat for Mekong dolphins. The Mekong dolphins have highly sensitive hearing organs. The government did not consider that the noisy dam building activity could kill the dolphins and make the species extinct. The second story is about the 1958 Four Pests campaign by China. One of the campaigns was to eliminate sparrows that were eating large quantities of grains. When taking the decision, the government did not consider that the sparrows also eat insects. With no sparrows to eat them, the locust population increased, causing immense damage to farms. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Hermann J. Steinher. Life is a continuous cycle of decisions that determine our stand in a world infested with competition.
Hello, I'm Manisha Rao. I would like to talk about two TED Talks on decision making. The first talk is by Tom Griffiths, professor, Princeton University. Tom gives 3 examples of how to think like a computer when making decisions. The first method is the explore-exploit trade-off method. Use this method when selecting a restaurant. Do you want to go to the one that you've already tried in the past? If yes, then you are in the exploit mode. Do you want to go to the one that you've never tried before? If yes, you are in the explore mode. The second method is called the 37% rule or the secretary problem. If you have 100 candidates to interview the first 37. Stop at this point. Identify the best in this lot. This person becomes the benchmark. Then start conducting the next interviews. Stop at a point when you meet the first person better than the benchmark person. This person is your secretary. This process will save you from interviewing all 100 candidates. This method, also called the optimal stopping problem, is under study since the days of the 17th century mathematician Jacob Bernoulli. The third method is optimizing limited capacity, analogous to the way a computer manages its memory. Let us say you want to clear your wardrobe because it has limited space. How will you decide what to keep and what to discard? Ask yourself these 4 questions. How long have I had this dress? Does it still function? Is it a duplicate of something that I already own? When was the last time I wore it? The second TED Talk is about how to make hard choices by Ruth Chang, philosopher and professor at the University of Oxford. According to Chang, a choice is easy when one alternative is better than the other, but a choice is hard when both are better in some ways than the other. For most people, making a hard choice is a dreaded and agonizing experience. But Chang says, hard choices are precious opportunities for us to bring out the best in ourselves. We have the power to create reasons for ourselves. Hard choices give us the opportunity to become the authors of our own lives. So always remember to welcome hard choices. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Richard Paul Evans. The most important story we'll ever write in life is our own, not with ink, but with our daily choices.
Hello, I'm Narayan Rao. I would like to summarize 2 books on decision-making skills. The first book is titled Predictably Irrational: The Hidden Forces That Shape Our Decisions. The author of this book is Dan Ariely, behavioral economist at Duke University. When it comes to making decisions in our lives, we think we're in control. We think we're making smart, rational choices. But are we? Don Ariely does not believe that we behave in rational ways. He says many of our decisions are predictable. Why irrational? Because our expectations, emotions, social norms, and other invisible, seemingly illogical forces cloud our reasoning abilities. Why predictable? Dan says, not only do we make astonishingly simple mistakes every day, but we make the same types of mistakes. We consistently overpay and underestimate, and we constantly procrastinate when it comes to making decisions. What's the way out? First and foremost is to set a goal and deadline with respect to the decision-making task. Next is to keep a log of your decisions so that you can identify the pattern of your decision-making. Are you averse to loss when dealing with stocks? Do you worry about buying expensive things? Do you buy things only when there is a huge discount? The second book I want to summarize is The Decision by Mikhail Krogerus and Roman Shefla. Most of us face the same questions every day. What do I want? And how can I get it? The Decision book describes the 50 best decision-making models. Let me tell you a few that I liked. The Eisenhower matrix is about managing our time effectively. It is about evaluating your tasks against its importance and urgency, and then deciding if the task could be eliminated, delegated, postponed for the next hour, or to be done now. The conflict resolution model of a decision is about taking a decision based on the weightage of the consequences of the conflict. Should I avoid this decision? Should I fight for the cause? Or should I give it up? Should I compromise? Etc. The Pareto model is about being aware that 80% of the output is created with 20% of input. What is interesting about the book is that the 50 models are grouped under these 4 categories. Understand yourself, 17 models. Understand others, 15 models. Improve yourself, 13 models. Improve others, 5 models. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Roy Disney. It is not hard to make decisions when you know what your values are.
Hello, I'm Sharan Sirur. I would like to summarize 2 movies on decision-making skills. The first movie is 12 Angry Men, a Henry Fonda movie. It is a movie about how one man brought 11 others to accept his decision. 12 jury members have to give their verdict whether an 18-year-old suspect is guilty or not in the case of his father's death. The first round of voting goes against the boy. 11 members say guilty and 1 says not guilty. The reason why that one man, Henry Fonda, says not guilty is because he has a doubt about the facts presented. The remaining 11 jury members are critical of Fonda for wasting their time. But over time, they see sense in what Fonda is doing. More and more jury members start to change their verdict. Ultimately, they give a unanimous verdict, not guilty. A great movie about bringing about consensus. What do we learn from this movie? The first lesson is that if we believe we're in the right, then we must not hesitate to speak our mind even when everyone is against us. There will be social pressures from the media and pressures from intellectuals. We must be aware of this eventuality. The second movie is a 2016 Tom Hanks movie titled Sully. 3 minutes into the flight, the Airbus A320 strikes a flock of birds, disabling both its engines. Without engine power, the pilot Sully has to swiftly make a decision about the future course of action. Sully decides to ditch the aircraft on the Hudson River. This decision saves the crew and all the passengers. Sully was in a situation where he was forced to take a decision under tremendous time pressure with grave understanding of the consequences of his failure. A great story about how pressure builds on the decision maker. What do we learn from this movie? The first lesson is that when we want to make a decision, we must shut down all distractions and focus on the problem. The second lesson is that we should listen to advisors, but not let them dictate us. Their job is to present you with their point of view, and yours is to make the decision. Let me end this chapter with a quote from Robert Greenleaf. One rarely has 100% of the information needed for a good decision, no matter how much one spends or how long one waits.
Hello, I'm Shiela Rao. I would like to summarize two stories from mythology on decision-making skills. The first story, The Judgment of Paris, is from Greek mythology. Zeus, the king of gods, holds a banquet in celebration of the marriage of Peleus and Thetis. Everyone is invited for the wedding except Eris, the goddess of discord. But Eris attends the wedding, bringing with her a golden apple upon which it is written, "For the fairest." Three goddesses, Aphrodite, Athena, and Hera, immediately claim the golden apple for themselves. They ask Zeus to decide. Zeus realizes that any decision would make the other two angry. To avoid this problem, he approaches Paris, Prince of Troy, who has a reputation for making fair decisions. No goddess wants to lose. Each decides to influence the decision by offering bribes to Paris. Paris gives the decision in favor of Aphrodite, who promised him the hand of the most beautiful woman on earth, Helen. Aphrodite helps Paris abduct Helen, already married to the king of Sparta. This results in a war that destroys the city of Troy. What we learn from this story is that people with their own personal agenda will try to manipulate the decision makers. The second story is from the Hindu epic Ramayana. It is about indecision. King Dashrath decides to crown as his heir to the throne his eldest son Ram. Dashrath's wife Kaikeyi, favorite among his three wives, feels that her son Bharat should become king. Kaikeyi reminds Dashrath about the two boons he had given her a long time ago and asks the king to fulfill them. She asks Dashrath to make Bharat the king of Ayodhya and to send Ram into exile for 14 years. This is a tough decision-making moment for Dashrath. He is torn between upholding his word and doing justice to Ram. He cannot make a decision. He is mentally paralyzed. Distressed at Dashrath's condition, Ram takes the decision on behalf of his father to relinquish his throne and walk away into exile. Ram honors the vow his father gave Queen Kaikeyi rather than asserting his own rightful claim to the throne. What do we learn from this story? Be aware that a lot of pressures will come your way to sway the decision. Every decision is right for one person but wrong for another. You must be clear as to why you took a particular decision. Let me end this chapter with a quote from John C. Maxwell. Life is a matter of choices, and every choice you make makes you. We hope that our efforts helped you understand the basics of decision-making skill. Regular listening of this audio will be our reward. Thank you.